In this video, we are going to be getting back into setting up the single search page for when you search on something and then it shows the result. And we're also going to be setting up a lot more of like the rating functionality finally, make it more of a Rate My Professor page. And if you guys remember last time I left you guys with a challenge to try and implement a way to filter courses search results. And so I wanted to show you guys what I did, and you can compare it to your own. I'm sure there's probably some similarities, but before we had made this button, this radio button, but it didn't do anything. And so now, if we were to search for professors and courses, so if I were to just type in an M, you'll see on my search results page, I actually now have two list views. I labeled one as professors, and you can see all the professors with an M are listed here. And I also have one for courses, and I just made one course MSB 341 in here to give you guys some example data. And so now when you search, you see two different search results. And you guys should have been able to implement on your own. If I go back here and if I were to toggle turning search professors off, or maybe let's keep professors on and search results off. And now if we were to type in something, maybe the letter M again, now you see it's only searching on professors. There's no courses being shown. So how did I do that? Let's take a look at Mendix. So let's see. So the main thing that we had to do is we needed to create an additional is course search field on, or sorry, is course search attribute on the search field entity that can keep track of this Boolean right here in the search courses. And so when we toggle it no, then it knows that it should not be displaying search courses, just like for professors, the same type of logic. And so now if we go into our search results page, let me double click into that. You'll see that our search results page not only has a list view, let me turn this on. I put a little text to label professors, and I made a list view that would return the results of professors. And then below that, I made another container with courses, and this is a course list view. And I created another microflow to get the course search results. And so I'm sure that you guys have something similar. But one other thing I also made that I should mention is this conditional visibility that we talked about last time. I made it so that if we were to double click into this container, I believe it's in here. Oh, it's not a container. Never mind. Inside of this row, there we go. Inside of this row, so this is the row for professor search results, you'll see that I actually enabled visibility right here to only be based on the attribute is professor search. That way, if is professor search, this Boolean attribute is set to false, this row will not be displayed. And I did the same thing for courses, for the course Boolean. That way that can keep track of the true or false value of is courses search. So we can see that here, just like that. So if you wanted to do something similar, you can do the same thing here. And if you guys aren't familiar with this layout view, this is a really simple way to just create rows and columns. We'll be working with layout views in this video, so you'll become much more familiar with them. How to like structure the visual aspect of your app. Now, really quick, last thing, this row right here, I'm showing if both professor search and course search are both set to false. That's just essentially saying, oh, there's no search results enabled. And so how am I doing that? Inside of visibility, you can actually create expressions. And so we haven't worked with this much yet in this tutorial, but you guys should be a little bit familiar with this from the Rapid Developer course. You're actually able to create expressions that are a little bit more complex, where you compare multiple attribute values within an entity. So you can see, here's this, I'm saying it's not professor search and it's not a course search. And so not is just a way of saying false. And this is the syntax that they use. So that's how I'm checking to see if both professor search and course search are set to false, and then I would display that row. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's kind of how we set up our search results page here. And then our get course search results microflow looks very, very similar to our get professor search results microflow that we made in the last video. All I'm doing is passing in the search field and retrieving a list of courses from the database that contains where a course number contains the search field input. So very similar syntax. And then I'm just returning that in a course list. So that's what we did. Let's see. Let's now start talking about what we're going to be implementing in this video. So this video might be a little bit of a longer one because we're going to be setting up all of the rating functionality and making a page where you can actually click into a professor and see their results. So let me show you what I'm talking about. We hop back over to the results page. You'll see right now, if I click on these, they're not doing anything. So that's what we're going to be trying to implement today is when you click on this, it should show a results page just like Rate My Professor website does. Okay, so let's just hop right into it. Let's get started. The first thing we should probably do is create a new page. And this page will be the page that you click into when you click on a professor. So let's do that. Let's see. So I'm just going to right click on the main module to add a new page. There we go. Okay. And you'll see that we have lots of different templates. You guys can choose a different template if you'd like, but I actually found one that I think will work pretty well for what we're trying to do here. So I'm just going to call this the professor page. Nice and easy. And this is all good. Let's see. So inside of this detail pages right here, there's actually some pretty good looking pages that I think will fit what we're looking for. Let's see if I can find it. They're a little bit different than what I wanted. Oh, this one. Yeah. This one, I like this one because it shows, it's kind of hard to see, but there's like a little profile image and some other blocks that are already pre-built. So we can use this one, this detail timeline to get started. So I'm just going to click OK. It's going to generate that page for us. Okay, there we go. And now we have this professor page. So you'll notice right off the bat, we have some errors, and a lot of this is just random placeholder data. So we're going to get rid of most of this. But let's first just take a look really fast at what's going on here. So you'll see lots of different containers going on. In this video, I want to help you guys better understand how to use the different containers that Mendix has, because those really help with getting the structure of your pages looking good. Without them, it's pretty complicated to get things lined up in a way that look normal on a website. And thankfully, Mendix has a lot of pre-built things. So we're going to be using this layout grid right here. So if you guys haven't used layout grid before, it's just here in our toolbox. It's this guy right here. And we'll be using this throughout the video, but this is essentially how they're creating this row and column view. So you can see we have this column here, a row here, and it's all nested inside of this layout grid. So if I click into this again, you can see that down here in this tree, you can see that there's a layout grid. Inside of that is a row, and then a column, and then a container. So that's kind of how Mendix is handling this styling. Okay, so this page is going to be containing our professor course, or sorry, the professor search results. Can't talk right now. So what types of things are we going to want it to display? Well, let's just kind of methodically go through each of these different layers and see what we need to configure, because there's a lot going on here and we'll probably need to put in a lot of work to get it working, but I know we can do it. Let's just start with this back button right here. We double click into this. Currently, we can see that it's doing nothing. It's just there for visual aesthetics, I guess. So let's actually make it do something. We can have a back button. I think that's great. So maybe we do this on click, and then there's an option to close a page. And closing here just means navigating to the next page. If you kind of picture pages as just kind of stacking on top of each other, closing a page is just removing the top of the page from that stack. So it's going to the page right before it. So if we were to click close page single, it should just navigate back one page for us. And so that's all we need to do here. Let's just click OK. And that should work for us. We'll test it in a minute, but okay, next layer. You can see that there's another layout grid right here that's nested inside of this parent layout grid. And so this right here, we want to be displaying maybe our professor's name, the department they're in, their profile image, if they have one, and then maybe their like rating here on the side. Kind of like Rate My Professors, they have like the rating on the side of the name. So let's configure that. Well, the first thing I should say is we need to actually pass in a page parameter, right? We need to be giving a professor entity to this page so that this data view can use it. So let's do that first. I'm just going to click add a page parameter, and we're going to select an entity right here, and we're going to select a professor. So we'll click OK. And now we have a professor parameter. And now if we click on this data view, we can actually select from context. That just means like the page itself. Let's actually select this page parameter professor as the source for this data view. And we do not want to automatically fill, so we'll just click no. And you'll see now we have a whole bunch of errors because now Mendix is like, whoa, this data down here does not match the professor data type. I don't see any attributes that match this type of data, which makes sense. That's what we would expect because all this is pre-filled data. But we'll just work on it a little bit at a time. So let's start here at the top. The first thing we need to do, let's get rid of this image, this placeholder image. And if you guys remember from the last video, we're going to replace this with a dynamic image. So let's just drag a dynamic image in from our toolbox right here. We can delete this. Okay. And now there's still an issue though, because it's not going to know where this image is stored. So we actually need, just like we did in the last video, we actually need a second data view right here that will actually get the professor image entity by association to professor. Because if you guys remember, if I click into our domain model right here, we have this professor entity, and then it's associated with this professor image entity. And so we need to actually create a second data view to house this professor image entity. That's where that entity will live. So let's do that. We'll drag this dynamic image in here. And then let's click into this data view. And we're going to actually say, yeah, for data source right here, let's select an entity. And now we're inside of this data view. I guess you could also just use this page parameter. We might not need this extra data view, but it doesn't really matter. And then you'll notice that Mendix is smart enough to say, oh, I noticed that there's an association between professor and professor image in your domain model. So let's use that professor image as the source of our entity. We'll click no. Okay, perfect. Now we have this professor image in there. And now we just need to tell this dynamic image that that is the entity that should be showing there. So let's click select. And we want to click this one, not this one, because this one is just saying like from the database. We want to click this one because that's the one that's actually coming from the association that we just pulled from. So let's click OK. And OK again. No. And you'll notice those errors just went away. And I believe, let's see, if we click into this, let's actually make this a thumbnail as well. I forgot to fix that. We can also fix the pixels later if it doesn't look very good. But I believe that that should be displaying our image for professors. So we'll test that in a minute as well. But yeah, that's good. Okay, I'm just going to save. Now let's hop over here. Okay, so we have this. Let me turn this off for a second. This is kind of what we're looking at right now. This is probably where we could put the professor's name and their department. But I also, over here on the right, I would like to put their rating. So how do we do that? Like make a horizontal layout. Well, I'm going to show you guys with a layout grid. So going back to this, let's actually drop in another layout grid. So I'm just going to drag from structure, drop into layout grid. And you can see this is how you can create kind of horizontal layouts inside of your app. So let's do this 661 right here. And you'll notice it just dropped in another layout grid. This is where we can put these two guys, the page header title and the supporting text. And then let's now actually fix that. And then this is where we'll eventually put the rating data. So we'll do that in just a second. Let's start with this though. Let's see. So page header title, we want this to be the professor's name. So if you guys remember how to do this, we actually need to click edit here. And then we need to create a parameter inside of this text caption. So in order to do that, we just put a little number 1 in brackets, just like this description says. And then this here is where we would feed it the professor name attribute. We'll select OK. And there we go. You'll see now there is the professor's name that will be showing right there. That's great. Okay, next part. Let's put the department here. And you can put whatever data you'd like here, but we're going to do the same thing. Make a template parameter and pass in the department. Just select OK, OK, OK. There we go. We got the name and department. That's great. Cool. So that looks good. I'm actually just going to copy both of these into here. There we go. And let's just change these to just show some example data because we still haven't made the rating logic to handle what we want it to do here. But kind of what I'm picturing is that this would be like their rating. So let's just say 4.4 out of 5. Sure. This would be like their rating out of 5 stars. As an example. And then this text down here could say like, you know, based on 15 reviews or something. And we'll actually change this to show data later in the video, but just as an example, I'm going to click save again. So yeah, I think that this will cover what we need it to do for the heading of our page. Let's keep on just moving down. So let's hop over to Rate My Professor, the actual website, and just take a look at what other information we should be showing here. Let's see, I need to just pull up one. There we go. Okay, so you guys can kind of see there's on the Rate My Professor website, there's this big rating here, overall quality based on 18 ratings, the professor's name. My computer's moving really slowly right now. We have kind of this graph distribution of all the different ratings. And then down below, if it lets me scroll, we have a list of all the ratings. So that's kind of all I wanted to see, just to get some ideas. So I might just close out of this because it's making my computer really slow. Hopefully this won't impact the video too much, but now that we have an idea of what to put here, maybe we change this right here into like a place where we could put some information about the professor. So maybe we just change that really fast. I'm just going to double click into this form title, and maybe we just call it Professor Info. I don't know if you guys have a better name for it. Okay, and then each of these, we can actually probably just delete most of this. Maybe we can keep the date. Because if I remember right, in our domain model, yeah, one of the attributes that we created was began teaching at. So maybe we could display that information right there. So if we go back over to professor, let's double click into this. And let's name this began teaching or in teaching since, I don't know, something like that. And then the attribute, let's actually set this to began teaching at right here. Okay, perfect. And you'll notice that all of our errors right here went away. We don't have any other info right now that I can think of that we could put in a form like this, but this is really just to give you guys an idea of what types of things to do. You'll also notice, I forgot to mention this, that I'm using the date picker widget in order to store date information, because if you guys remember, this began teaching attribute is actually a date and time data type. If you guys wanted to store text or a drop down, you'll notice that there's all different sorts of input elements is what they're called. And so based on the data type that you're using, you might need to select a different one. So for dates, you have to use date picker, but for texts like strings, you could use text box, text area. Enums would have to use drop down, which you guys have seen in another video I made. And you can see there's a couple others too. So I just figured I would mention that really fast. Okay, now I'm just moving down the list. Let's see. I'm kind of picturing maybe putting a list view of all the courses that the professor teaches, in addition to a list view of the ratings that they've received. So maybe we try that. Let's just give it a whirl. So we can actually just delete this. I don't think we need this data grid. So I'm just going to delete it. There we go. And let's duplicate this container. So I'm just going to paste another one right there. And so these will be our two list views that we create. So if we hop over to the side here, let's actually drag in two list views. That's what I want. Okay, list view 1 and list view 2. Okay, perfect. And I'm actually going to copy this text right here as well, so we can have like a little header. I'm just going to drag that up to the top here. And let's do the same thing right here. There we go. I'll drag that up there. Okay, cool. So let's just call this one courses taught, maybe. And this would just be a list of all the courses that the professor teaches. And this down here would be ratings received, something like that, maybe. We'll just select OK. Okay, that looks good. So now the question is, want to see if you guys can think about this for a second. How would we show the courses that a professor teaches or the ratings that a professor has received? I'll give you guys a hint. It actually has to do with their relationship in the domain model. Because if you guys remember, all of these guys are interrelated. They have these arrows, these associations between them. And so if you guys look, you'll actually see that courses are associated with professors, and so are ratings, which means that we can grab the data associated with one professor by their association. And I'll show you guys how to do that. So inside this list view, we can actually just click into this right here. And on this data source tab, we can select association as an option to grab data, which is really handy. That allows us to get any data associated with one professor. So if we select the entity right here inside of our data view, let's grab the courses associated with a professor. You'll see that that Mendix is recognizing that association right here. And for this one, sure, let's automatically fill the contents just so we can have some data in there. Cool. we'll fix this in a minute, but you guys get the idea. It just grabbed a bunch of courses over the association between courses and professors. Let's do the same thing for ratings. Data source, association, and let's grab the ratings this time. And I'll click OK. Automatically fill. There we go. Look at all that. We're only down to 2 errors now. That's pretty good. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Let's save. Eventually we'll need to format this because this is going to look super ugly on the page. But for now, I just want to get it to compile and run so we can actually see it in the browser. So let's not worry about this just yet. Let's hop over to this timeline. This is our last issue. We are not going to need this at all. I don't think we're going to need a timeline. So let's just delete it. And let's, I don't know, we could probably just run the app. I kind of want to create a chart though. Hopefully it won't be too complicated, but going back to Rate My Professors, if you guys remember, there was like that distribution graph of all the different ratings. I think something like that would be kind of cool. So maybe we try that. If we scroll down on our toolbox, you'll see that there's charts, a chart section. So I've experimented with these before and they're kind of tricky. They're not super intuitive. But I think for this, just creating a simple column chart actually would do what we need it to do for the purposes of this tutorial. Because I think that'd be kind of cool to have a chart. This is optional. If you guys don't want to do this part, you can just skip. But let's see if we can configure this chart to show the ratings that a professor has received. Okay, so what do we need to do? Inside of here, we're going to need to create a series. A series is just like a data set that you're representing on the chart. So let's create new, just a single series. We don't want to show multiple series. And as a data source, let's select by association again and get this rating entity right here. Series name, I don't know, ratings, something like that. And then, so now we need to configure what the X and Y attributes are showing, or yeah, these axes, what are they showing? So in order to do that, I'm thinking both of them would just be rating numbers, because we just want to show the rating number, if you guys remember, is just like the actual number that someone has rated a professor or a course by. And so we want to show that data on the x-axis for sure, because that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 stars. But the y-axis is the number of ratings. And so if you think about that, it's actually also just going to be showing the rating number, but we're going to need to use this aggregation function because we're going to need a way to count. This is exactly what we want, I think. We're going to want a way to count the number of ratings that a professor has received. So I believe that this would actually do what we want it to do. And if that doesn't make sense, that's okay. I think that this should compile now. No errors, that's good. Okay. Let's run our app. Let's take a look at all the changes we've made. We've done a lot of stuff. Let's just rerun our app and take a look. Oh, you know what? We actually, before we can actually see what this page looks like, we're actually going to need a way to navigate to it, because currently we've just created the page. We haven't actually navigated to it. So let's actually really fast configure that. So that will be inside of our search results page, because that's where the results are coming in. We just need a way so that when someone clicks on an entry here, they are taken to the search results page for that certain professor. And that's actually really easy to do in a list view, thankfully. So we don't need to write a nanoflow or microflow or anything. If we just click into the list view, let's see. I believe it's just in here. Oh, yeah, there we go. On click, we need to show a page. So this on click is kind of just saying on click of like a specific list item. It's not just on click of any item, it's like a specific one. So it'll know what we mean by on click. On click, we want to show this professor page, right? That's our singular professor page. And you'll see that Mendix is smart enough. If we click into these page settings, you'll notice that it's going to pass this professor object from the list view into our page, which is exactly what we need. We want to say this particular list item, take that professor that's associated with it and pass it to this professor page where it'll show the data about that professor. So we'll click OK. And I believe that that will allow us to see what we've built so far. So I'm going to rerun our app. Okay, our app is now running. Cool. So now I believe if I click Scott Murph right here, it'll show me a page with Scott Murph's info. Oh, that's not what we wanted, right? The reason that I believe that this happened is because I don't think that we've actually told Mendix who's allowed to see that page. So, oops, let's go back. Dang it, I forgot about that. Let's go back into our professor page. One last thing we need to do is we need to actually go into, just if you click layout here, and then properties here on the side, we need to change this navigation option right here. Let me make that a little bit bigger. We need to change who is visible for. We need to say that users are allowed to see this page. Otherwise, Mendix will be like, oh, you're not allowed to be here. So I'm just going to redirect you to a login page. Okay, let's try that again. So yeah, all we changed was just this navigation, making it visible for users. And you can also do that, I believe, by just right-clicking on the page, going to properties. Maybe not for that. This page is a little bit tricky to do it with, but let's try here. I don't know why I'm not seeing it here, but anyway, if you just click layout and then down here, visible for user, you just have to change that. Okay, let's try this again. Let's try and search. There he is, Scott Murph. If we click on his name, I believe it should now route us to the page. Whoa, look at that. We have a page showing data. This is awesome. Okay, a couple things I noticed right off the bat that I probably should have mentioned. You guys most likely are not seeing the same thing because up to this point in the tutorial, we have not created ratings. The only reason I'm seeing these and this chart actually has data is because prior to this video, I had made a couple ratings for testing, but I forgot to delete them. So don't worry if your page doesn't show any data. Like if there's no courses or ratings, that's just because you haven't created any course or rating objects in your database yet. So let's actually do that next so that you guys can see something similar to this. Let's see if our back button works too. Nice, it does. That's cool. Yeah, this looks really good. So let's see. What I'm thinking is maybe just for simplicity, we could either, maybe we'll just put some buttons down here for creating a new rating, professor, and course, just for you guys for simplicity's sake. Obviously, in a real app, you probably wouldn't want to just let anyone create professors or courses or ratings. But because this app is more just for demoing purposes and for you guys to like test your products, I think that it would be fine. So let's see, let's just do that really fast. Let's see, if we hop over to our homepage, we just need a way to create professors, courses, and ratings from the homepage. Okay, let's see. Let's just drag in another layout grid so that we can put them horizontally. And we'll just put 3 buttons down here. I just clicked on this 4-4-4 layout grid so that they're evenly spaced. And let's put some buttons in here so that we can actually create some ratings for you guys so you can test your app. So let's see, we're going to need to put a button. Let's see, create button. That sounds pretty good. Let's drag in our first create button and let's hop into our main. What is it creating? This one can create a professor maybe. And you don't have to do this if you already have a button somewhere else, like maybe in your professor or courses page to do these things. You don't need to do this, but I'm just going to do it really fast because I currently don't. But yeah, let's create a new professor. It's giving us an error because we actually need to say where our form is to create that professor. And if you guys remember, we actually generated those pretty early on in the tutorial, just the professor new edit pages. So let's just set that as the page that it should use to create this professor. So professor new edit is what we want. We'll click OK. And let's actually also change this to say new professor so we know. Okay, cool. Now let's do the same thing. We'll create another create button. And this one can be for courses. Select OK. Let's call this new course. And we will create this with inside of our overview pages, our course new edit page. We'll select OK. And last one, new rating. This is the one that you guys probably definitely need. So let's create a new rating. And for this one, same thing. We'll name it new rating. And we will create this inside of our rating new edit page. Okay, cool. I'm just going to save. I believe, yeah, this is roughly how it'll look. That looks fine. If you guys would like, I don't know if you guys have experimented with this, but you can actually add an icon, which might be kind of nice. We could just add this little add icon right there. I think that'll make it look a little bit better. And you can choose a different icon if you want, but just under this icon, I'm just selecting the first one. Okay, let's save. Now, if we run our app, okay, cool. Cool, look at those. We have buttons. They're kind of ugly, but whatever. They're mostly just for us to test. So let's create a new rating. And you'll notice it just opened up with a new rating ID. Yours will likely say 0 or 1 because you probably haven't created any ratings up to this point. Mine is updating to 4 because I've already created 3 other ratings. So the rating number here, that's just like the value in which you want to give a review. So between 1 and 5. However, in another video, we might actually add some checks here, because if you think about it, I could also just put like 1,000 here and I could save it and create a new one and I wouldn't see any issues with that. But in a rating system, we want to have constraints, right? We don't want to let anyone put in a number that's less than 0 or 1 or something and greater than 5. So Maybe in the next video, we can talk about how to do that. But for the sake of this, let's just assume that our users are smart and they're not going to do that. And let's just say that we want to give, I don't know, 4-star rating. Sorry, Scott, I'm going to give you a 4-star rating. He's pretty good, I guess. Just kidding. Disclaimer, I actually really, or not disclaimer, but side note, I actually think Scott's awesome. I'm just using a 4 because I am trying to test that graph to see if it's going to show a 4-star rating for us. But yeah, let's just say he's pretty good, right? He's pretty good. And let's say for our professor that we're going to rate Scott. And our course, oh, I don't like that it says business. We might have to go in and change that in a second. I believe that this is MSB 341 though. We'll fix that in a second, but let's just save. Okay, so it didn't throw any errors or anything. So I think that that created a rating successfully. So now if we were to search Scott, click into it. Okay, cool. You guys will notice that our chart correctly identified that we got 1 extra rating. And I know it's really gross looking, like the data is really jumbled in there. We'll fix that in a minute too, but there is our rating. He's pretty good, I guess, Scott Murph. So this is working. And to test that it's working, if we were to click into another professor, so let's try and search for someone else. I think I have someone named sure, Mary Cutler. If we click into her, this is probably what your guys's search results page or your professor page looked more like. You'll notice that that rating that we just created is not showing up here, which is exactly what we want, right? We don't want ratings that don't have to do with another professor showing up on a professor page. That's awesome. That means that our logic is working, that we're correctly pulling the right data into these list views. Now, there's still a few more issues we're going to have to fix before this video's up. Let's see. A couple that come to mind are this ratings right here. We actually need to show correct data here, which we have not done. And let's see what else. I think there was one other thing. Let me go back to Scott so I can remember. Oh yeah, let's really fast. Let's fix the formatting on this so it looks better because currently this looks pretty bad. But yeah, I think those are the main things. Oh, and then this was the other thing. Inside of our overview pages for rating new edit page, I want it to be that this drop down right here, if you guys remember, it just said business. I want to say MSB 341. So we just need to show a different attribute here. So I just double clicked into that. If we click select, let's make it the course number. I believe that that should solve our issue. Let's try it. So I'm just going to reload. Okay. App has been reloaded. Cool. Let's go back to our homepage. Now, if we click new rating, there we go. We'll notice that MSB 341 is the name showed in this dropdown. So we just needed to change the attribute that it was showing, but it's still showing courses. So this is great. Awesome. Okay. Just kind of methodically trying to work through what else we need to do here. Back to this page. Okay. Yep, that's right. We need to do 2 more things before this video is over. We need to create this ratings and fix the formatting here. Let's start with formatting. That should be easier. So hopping into our professor page here. Our formatting is showing up weirdly because this is just what was generated by default. If we want to change it, we can actually use this layout grid again, or just a container, if you guys would rather, to make sure that they're stacking on top of each other instead of just displaying like in a line like this. We can also change the font sizes and colors and stuff if you want. So course ID, we definitely don't need to show that. The department, maybe. I think the course number is like the main thing we're showing, and then maybe the description. We don't need to show the professor's name either. Okay, so how can we stack them on top of each other? There's a couple of different ways you can do this. One way is to use a layout grid, and another way is to use containers. I don't know if it really matters too much. Let's just use a layout grid. And we'll make this one full, and I'll show you guys how we can use this to stack stuff. So let's put the course number right here. And if you guys will see that there's a row right here inside of this layout grid. If we select that and then right click, you'll see that there's options to insert row above or below. So let's insert one below, make that one full, and you'll notice, oh, now it's stacking. That's sweet. So let's, you know what? I don't even know if we need department because we already know where that is, right? Yeah, that's fine. We just want the course number and the description. So that looks pretty good. Let's make this course number a little bit bigger. So if we go over to render mode, let's give it a heading type. That'll make it render a little bit bigger, maybe heading 5. I don't know. This is somewhat arbitrary, I guess. I don't know. That looks fine. Now it'll look something more like this. Yeah, I think that's fine. Cool. Let's fix the ratings received or the ratings list view right here. Same thing. We don't need that. Don't need that. We don't need that. Well, actually, we might want this because what if a teacher is teaching multiple classes? And so we want to see like which rating is associated with which class that they're teaching. So same thing, let's make a layout grid. And we'll do a full one. And let's just drag in the rating number. And then let's right click on row, insert a row below. Same thing. Let's put the comment. And I'm trying to think where this would go. This would be like MSB 341. Maybe we can just go like this. And then if you guys, you know what? Let's actually delete it and we'll put it inside of here. I'll show you guys what I'm thinking in a second. But let's first just click into this. Same thing. Let's make this a heading 5 so it looks better. And then let's click into here and let's actually click edit. And let's actually add a second template parameter here. And that can be where the course number goes. We'll just try it out. So maybe like a little dash in between, or maybe in like parentheses, maybe. And then we can just put another template parameter like this. So let's create a new one. And for this, so we're trying to show the course number, I believe. So same thing, we're grabbing it by association again, and we're going to show the course number here. And let's just try that. I don't know how that'll look, but we're just going to give it a whirl. Okay, there we go. Just going to save, rerun my project. All right, our app is running. Let's take a look at how it looks now. Oh yeah. That looks much better. Okay, so here's our here are our list views. This looks much better than what it looked like before, if you guys remember. I don't love this actually. Also, we should put this out of 5. Like right now, it's just showing the number, but it's not. It's like in reference to what? Like there's no out of how many? 5 out of what? So let's fix that. And then I don't love the parentheses. Um, let's actually put this MSB 341 maybe in the comment. I like that better, I think. So let's do that. So we'll click into here. I'll just get rid of this. And we'll just get rid of this here. And let's actually make this out of 5. So now it'll show the rating out of 5. It'll look a lot better. Yeah, just like that. And then let's actually go into here and go like this. So now there'll be a dash in between them, and we can just put the rating course number here. Let's actually move this up. So now it'll be MSB 341 dash and then the comment. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm just using template parameters to kind of style my app and show the data. We're going to just rerun this one more time. Updating, back over to here. It's loading. Yeah, that looks much better. So now it kind of shows like 5 out of 5, 0 out of 5. We must have forgotten to put the course that it's associated with. This is another like constraint that we should probably put on ratings, is like you must assign it to a course as well. And then eventually I would also like to have like the name of who left the rating. So maybe we can add that in another video, but that looks pretty good though. We have the ratings, the courses, a little chart right here that shows ratings. Like this is 5 stars. I don't love the scales, but I don't know if it's worth the time to try and figure out how to make the scale look better. I think for the sake of this video, it's fine. So I think the last thing that we're going to try and tackle in this video is just getting this set up. The ratings to actually show like the average of all of his ratings based on X number of ratings. So how do we do that? I'm just going to get a drink of water really quick. Okay, sorry about that. So in order to do this, we're going to actually have to create some custom logic because Mendix unfortunately does not have a way to easily just check the sum or the average of X amount of ratings. Like there's no built-in logic for that, so we're just gonna have to create it. And this might be a little bit complicated, but I definitely think we can do it. So let's see if we can think about this for a second. So let's hop over to our Studio Pro again. So if you guys think about it for a second, what we actually just need is to get all ratings associated with professor again, just like we're doing in the list view. We probably need to do this in a microflow or a nanoflow. And then we need to actually return that data, return the average of all the ratings as this value. So how would we do that? Well, we're actually going to be using non-persistable entities again to do this, because once again, we kind of just need a placeholder entity to store that value, like the blank out of 5. We're going to need a place to store that. So let's just start by doing that. We're going to need a new non-persistable entity. And if you guys remember, non-persistable entities are these yellow ones right here. They're not actually stored in the database. They're just used in the browser to kind of temporarily hold data for that user, but they're not actually being saved anywhere. It's just kind of like once you refresh the page or like, they need to be recreated. Whereas in the database, all these blue entities, they're like saved, they're not going anywhere. So let's create a new non-persistable entity that can store the average of a professor's ratings. So we can just click here. I'll just put it down here. And I'll just double click into it. And let's just call this, I don't know, the average rating entity. It's probably only going to need one attribute because it's just literally storing that number. But we need to make sure that we uncheck this because now it will not be stored in the database. That's what we want. So let's click a new attribute and let's just call it, I don't know. I'm really not good at names. The rating number. And this is actually not what we want. Mendix did not correctly infer what we wanted because if you guys look at this, it says a value of type integer is a positive or negative number without decimals. That's the kicker right there. We want something with decimals because it could be like 3.9 out of 5 stars or like 4.7. And so we actually need to change it to this decimal data type. And yeah, this is what we want right here. So now this rating number can be stored as a decimal type. If we just click OK. Oh, while I'm thinking about it as well, we're going to run into this issue later if we don't do it now. Let's actually create access rules as well. We need to just tell Mendix that users are allowed to interact with this entity. So let's just select users. Users are allowed to create and delete, and they're allowed to read and write. That's great. All right, so we click OK. We save. Now we have this average rating entity that we're actually able to store the average rating in. And so now we can create a microflow or a nanoflow that will actually store the number that we need there, and then we can show it on our page. So hopping back over to our search results page. No, not search results, sorry, professor page. We need to catch this, or not catch, we need to store this entity that we just created in a data view so that we can then display it here. Because kind of once again, like data views are just where Mendix can kind of like store your data that you're creating from a microflow or a nanoflow or a page parameter. And that way that it can display it on the page. So we have a data view way up here that's storing professor, but we also need a data view right here locally to show that average rating. So let's do that. I'm just going to drag in another data view. And let's just drop in both of these things. Eventually we'll need to worry about this, but let's worry about this top number first. So if we double click into this data view, we are going to have to configure this data source to actually listen to a microflow or a nanoflow, because that's where it's actually going to be that's where it's going to create this average rating entity that we just made and store it. So let's make this a nanoflow, because if you guys remember, nanoflows are just more lightweight versions of microflows. And I don't think that we're going to need a microflow to do what we need to do here. So we can just create a nanoflow. Let's click select, and we are going to have to create a new one. So let's do that. I'm going to just select new. And this is of type data source, so DS, because we're feeding it to a data view. And what entity is it interacting with? This is with the average rating entity, I guess. And what is it doing? It's just get average rating. I don't know if we're going to need like one for professor and one for courses. Let's actually just make this get average professor rating. So this data, or sorry, I can't talk. This nanoflow will just be returning the average ratings for a single professor. And so we're going to need to include this professor entity that we're passing around in our page, because this is the professor that we're going to be needing the ratings for, right? So let's click OK. Okay, and you'll notice that it just generated that nanoflow for us, and it's passing in this professor parameter. That's all good. So let's click OK. However, we still have the issue because we haven't actually implemented this nanoflow yet. So let's actually go do that, which is right here. So I'm just going to double click into that. Okay. So let's think about what we want this to do. This is where we're calculating the average rating. So we're going to need to work with some lists. We're going to need to work with a list of ratings, go through that list, and figure out what the average rating is from all the ratings, and then return that value within our average rating entity. Okay, that's a lot of talking. Let's, first thing we need to do is we need to get all of the ratings associated with the professor. So let's do that. We need to retrieve something. And we also, we want to retrieve it by association, right? We want to get all ratings associated with a professor. So let's click into here. By association, yes. And which association? Of professor that we're passing in right here. And we want to get this list of ratings associated with the professor. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Okay, so we get this list, but then how in the world do we figure out the average rating from that? Well, actually, Mendix makes it very easy. You guys might have noticed here on the right, there's some list activities, list operations, and there's all sorts of things you can do in here. But we're actually just going to be using, I believe it's this aggregate list activity. We might have to check, but let's drag this in. And this will allow us to find the average rating from this list of ratings. So let's just click into here. We're going to select the rating list that we just created. And this is like what we actually want this list activity to do. And so we don't want it to count, but let's see if there's an average. Oh, look at that. And you can see there's all sorts of other things you can do with lists. You can sum them up, find the minimum or maximum. These you probably won't need to use very much. These are kind of like checks to see like if something exists in your list. So you probably won't have to use these, but for the sake of this video, we'll definitely just need this average, and the average of an attribute. If you also wanted to make like a more specific expression, you could actually open up this expression editor and do more advanced things. But for us, I think all we need is we just need to average up this rating number, right? And that will output the average rating number for all of our ratings for a professor. That's pretty cool. Okay, and you'll see it's a decimal type, which is exactly what we want, right? Because now what we can do is we can create our average rating entity. If you guys remember, we made that in our domain model just a minute ago. We can create that entity and then assign the average rating attribute on that entity to this average rating number that we just created. So hopefully that'll make more sense once I do it. Let's click into here. So we're going to create this average rating entity that I just talked about. And when we create it, we're actually going to assign it the value that we just calculated, the average of all the ratings. So let's click new. And this rating number will be assigned to this average rating number. And now we have this new average rating value that's being correctly calculated and then passed into this new object we're creating. This is looking great. There's only one thing left that we have to do, and that's just return this from our NanoFlow. We just need to return that newly created object to give to our data view. So let's return this new average rating, and you'll see that it's having an issue because our return type has not been specified, so we just need to update the type. Now, if we click OK, I believe that that's all we need to do to calculate the average rating. So that's pretty cool. Let's see. Let me just make sure there's no errors. Oh, there is one more error. We just need to select who is allowed to use this microflow. So if we just right click on the NanoFlow, excuse me, and go into this screen, we just need to select the allowed roles and select user. And now all of our errors should go away, I believe. Nice. No more errors. Love it. Okay. Now hopping back over to this data view, now it's recognizing that the source of this data view is an average rating entity, which is great. The only last thing we have to do is tell this text field that this is the value we want to show instead of just a static for value. So we'll click into here. We'll make this into a template parameter like that. And I don't know what this is, but we'll just get rid of it. We're going to make this the average rating number from our data view right here. And decimal precision, we probably just want one, 3.9. We don't need 3.97. And we'll click OK. OK again. And look at that. We now are dynamically calculating the average rating of professors. Let's go check it out, see if it works. It does have to shut down the server, unfortunately, so we'll take a minute. Whenever you make changes to your domain model, it does take longer to load back up the browser because your domain model means that the back end of your project has changed, and so Mendix needs to shut everything down and reboot it, which is kind of annoying. Up to this point, we haven't made any changes to our domain model, but we just did, so. Yeah, so the last thing we'll do in this video, sorry, this video has been very long, but let's see. The last thing we need to do is to make or to add one more attribute to that average rating where it just gets the count of how many reviews there are associated with professor, and then this will dynamically show that. But let's just hop over to our browser in a second. I think it's almost done. Okay, view app. We're gonna just click over. Cool. Oh, did not mean to open a new window. That's okay. Okay, I'm just gonna search for Scott. There he is. Let's click into here. Whoa, and look at that. 3.5 out of 5. Wow, that's pretty bad. Sorry, Scott. I think it's because I had accidentally made a 0-star review, so it's kind of pulling his data down a little bit. So my apologies, Scott. I think you're 5 out of 5. Sorry I gave you a 4 out of 5 too. That was pretty dumb. I think he's 5 out of 5, but yeah, so this value is updating dynamically. So if we were to click into another professor, I believe it would be showing different things. I think I have someone named Test. Yeah. So now it's not showing anything because there's no data. But if we were to make, I don't know, let's hop over to our page. Let's add a new rating for, I don't know, 4 out of 5. pretty cool person. Let's say Ashley Johnson's a pretty cool person. I don't know who you are, Ashley Johnson. I just made you up, but I'm sure there are lots of you in the world. Okay, cool. So now if we were to search for Ashley Johnson, look at that. 4 out of 5. There is our rating we just made. So I believe it's correctly calculating the average. This chart is kind of weird. I don't love it, but I don't know. It's Mendix's default. So that's what we're working with, I guess. This is great though. This is working. So let's do the last thing and then we'll finish up this video. Let's hop back over to Mendix. The last thing we need to do is just show a way to display all reviews that a specific professor has gotten. Okay, so in order to do that, let's go into get average professor rating, this nano flow that we're using. And so actually, this should be pretty easy to do because we're already retrieving a list. We just need to do another aggregate list activity and store it as a separate variable. This time we just want to count, right? We just want to count how many items there are in the rating list. That should be super easy. Count the rating list, and we'll call the value, let's call it rating count, just so that's clear. Count the rating list. And now when we create this average rating, let's just create, oh, actually, before we do that, we need to hop over to our domain model again. And we need to actually add another attribute that is just called total ratings. And this is where we will store the value that we're going to create. And this one can just be an integer. We don't need decimals for that. Total ratings, integer. Looks great. All right, now I'm going to click save. Let me actually make sure that our access rules are looking good. Yep, that looks great. Read and write. That's what we want. Okay, now I'm just going to click save again. Hop back over to our NanoFlow. And now when we create the average rating, we can add this total ratings, and we can just set the rating count that we just created. Okay, hopefully that made sense. All we're doing is we're just using another list, aggregate list activity to count the rating list, and then we're storing that value inside of our average rating entity and passing it into our data view. So let's go back to our professor page. And we're just going to click into this, edit. We're going to change this 15 into a template parameter. And we're going to make this the total ratings attribute that we just created. And now this should be accurately displaying all of the data associated with the professor that we have made. So unfortunately, it does have to shut down the server again. Should have thought about that and probably just done everything at the same time, but that's okay. But with that, I'm pretty sure we will have a working page to display professors when you click on their name from the search results, which is super cool, right? Hopefully everything that we worked on in this video makes sense. We covered a lot of stuff. We covered layout grids, list views and list operations. We added all sorts of charts and other stuff that I'm forgetting about. But I hope that the main takeaway from this video is just that, or is how to visually structure your pages with layout grids, how to use lists inside of your nanoflows and microflows, and how to dynamically display data using those different methods, I guess. Okay, so hopping over to our page again, let's search up Scott again. There he is. Okay, based on 4 reviews. That's exactly what we want to see, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Awesome. So once again, I want to leave you guys with a challenge. We went through a lot of stuff in this video. I want to see if you guys want to try and configure your own individual course view page. So when I click on this MSB 341, it shows a page for MSB 341. Maybe it shows like the page description, some ratings that have been given to MSB 341. Maybe you can show who it's taught by. So in this case, it'd be Professor Murph, and then maybe a link to link back to Professor Murph's page. I think you guys have every skill or tool in the toolbox you need to do that. And so that is where I want to leave it with you guys. I apologize. We didn't actually go through some of the things I mentioned that we would in the last video. We didn't talk about snippets and a couple other things, but I think that the skills from this video will be really valuable for you guys as you build your own apps. And I honestly think this is probably either the second to last or the last video in this tutorial, because at this point, we have a working Rate My Professors app. You really think about it. You can search. It shows courses and professors. You can click on a professor, see ratings about them. You can leave reviews. It's not super pretty, but it definitely does the same exact job as a Rate My Professor page in showing real data. In the next video, if we do end up continuing this tutorial, we'll most likely be working on data validation, which just means like, like I talked about, adding constraints to data that you put in your database. So like, for example, this rating, you can only put a number between 1 and 5. You can put 1,000 or something. And doing actions like that, I think, is a pretty important practice for creating robust apps. So in the next video, we might do some data validation work and talk about, maybe we'll talk about some event handling. We'll see. But yeah, hopefully this video was super helpful. And thanks for following along.